Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the report on Sunak's secret strategy conference set for next month, where he and his advisors will discuss their general election strategy before presumably announcing the general themes to his party and the country. But will it improve his chances or just be another opportunity to showcase how politically inept the Tories are at the moment? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So yeah, the Sunday Times has been reporting on this secret strategy conference. The fact that it's been reported means that the conference isn't secret, of course, but the contents of it are likely to be. I get the impression it's not going to be cabinet ministers that are going to be there, so probably not a lot of blabbing going on afterwards. They've seen a leaked invitation which suggests that the conference will be to fully brief on the next phase of general election preparations. With the next phase? So this might be a good time to look at the previous phases then, yes? According to the Tories, and the Times is also of this view, the first phase of Rishi Sunak's time in power was steadying the ship after the disastrous mini-budget of Liz Truss. This is, however, rubbish. It is true that the party did need to steady the ship, but they did so pretty much the second Truss was replaced. At the very end of the lettuce wars, Labour were 37 points ahead in the polls. 2 weeks after Sunak took over, Labour were 21 points ahead in the polls. Right now, Labour are 22 points ahead. So basically, we can look at it like this. The steadying of the ship took about 2 weeks. Since then, since 2 weeks into Rishi Sunak being Prime Minister, the Tories have not closed the gap at all. It's gone up and down, of course, as events shape the minds of swing voters, but that gap has remained steady. So this steadying of the ship period lasted 2 weeks. Anything after that was not a steadying of the ship period. If it was an attempt to, it didn't work. But the Tories try to pretend that it's actually taken much longer. There's a lot of work to do. It's like, no, all you had to do was bin Truss and appoint someone vaguely credible. If they'd managed to get someone credible who wasn't also a political ignoramus, they would have closed the gap further. But as it is, beggars can't be choosers, and the Tories just had to settle for vaguely credible as the best they could manage. So the way I see it, these have been the actual phases of Sunak's time as leader so far. First phase, steadying the ship, took about 2 weeks. Second phase, ordering investigations into the reprobates he'd appointed to cabinet. In other words, immediately dealing with his own mess. If you recall, 3 cabinet ministers had to be binned: Williamson, Zahawi and Raab. And it was in that period of time towards the end of last year when the various investigations were ordered. Third phase was from the start of this year when he announced his 5 pledges. It was an attempt to claim credit for things that were just going to happen naturally anyway, or they were supposed to until he messed them up. Fourth phase was an attempt to present the grand vision. You know, he's talked about a new Silicon Valley in Cambridge, chessboards in public parks, more maths for everyone. Unfortunately, people are a little bit sick of grand visions these days, and as grand visions go, well, Sunak's really uninspiring. The fifth phase is what we're in now, and I'm guessing is what this conference is all about. Certainly that's the impression I get from this article. The culture wars phase, or as they're calling it, the hyperpolitics phase. Now, granted, the Tories have been pushing culture wars forever and really ramped it up after Labour took their poll lead. But Sunak tended to avoid them. It obviously wasn't his thing. There are a few cabinet ministers that can't be bothered with it, like James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, to his credit, can't be asked with them. But Sunak is now embracing them. So it is now officially what his government's doing. And it would be interesting to think that this conference would conclude that the culture wars are just not working. But that is not the impression I'm getting from this article. This Times report talks about what the Tories think are good policy areas for them. So they identify that they've got public support for their action against Just Stop Oil. Now, here is where they're making a huge mistake. They have public support for taking action against people who routinely block traffic. But the Tories think that this support also means that the public support the Tories' actions against Just Stop Oil's political aims. No, they don't. They agree with those. The public support net zero. They just don't support roads being blocked. It's a mark of how little political intelligence that the Tories have right now that they aren't able to make this distinction. And if it's not just Tory MPs or ministers, but their own advisors, their strategists who can't work this out, the whole operation's knackered. They also think they have public support on immigration and trans issues. Again, polling shows this to be powerfully wrong, although in different ways. The public do not think the government are getting anything right on immigration, whatever their views. There are different members of the public who have different ideas about what would be the right thing to do on immigration, but only 10% of them in a recent poll think the Tories have the right ideas. As for trans rights, yes, they've got a better chance of being in tune with many of their target voters with their attitudes here. But as I keep pointing out, it's not a vote winner. People don't vote in general elections on single, very niche policy areas which don't affect their lives. They don't vote for an opinion they have on something else. They vote for what they think is going to be better for them. If this report is an accurate reflection of the strategic thinking in the Tory party, I would say they're getting it all backwards. What they're doing is identifying policy areas where they naturally happen to have public support and seeking to push them to try and make the public think this is what you should vote for us for. What they should be doing is identifying the policy areas that voters think they should be voting on, and and adopt policies which satisfy those voters and are deemed compatible with Conservative Party values. They're not. Labour are, the Tories aren't. Is it any wonder that polling shows that most people think Labour is listening than the Conservatives? Then there was the major aspect to this article. Now, this wasn't a surprise because I've talked about it before, but this is a huge strategic error, I feel. I mean, in my opinion, but really. I'm going to quote a couple of bits here because it was a remarkable couple of paragraphs. The first bit, there's a bit of the quote. The Prime Minister has to break out of his comfort zone of appearing decent, technocratic and hard-working. This is insane because it's literally all he's got going for him. Boris Johnson was lazy. That Sunak is seen as hard-working is actually a big plus for him. What sort of batshit crazy strategist is suggesting he needs to drop this perception of being hard-working? As for the decent technocratic thing, I get that. Starmer's main drawback is the lack of charisma, or at least the sort of charisma which projects itself across a nation. You know, people will say, oh, but on a personal level, Keir Starmer comes across really well. All right, people said that about Theresa May, didn't help her in 2017, didn't it? Right? So that's his major drawback. But Starmer comes across very well as that decent technocrat. Now, Sunak also lacks this charisma. So effectively what you've got is a Sunak versus Starmer in the battle of the decent technocrats, and Sunak is losing. So I absolutely get that strategists are going, well, you're losing all day long to Starmer fighting on this platform. So you need a new personality. You need to be something else. But you can't be something you're not. You can deviate a little, but you can't fundamentally be something you're not. Sunak is not an award-winning actor, and even actors only have to keep up. They only have to stay in the role for the length of the performance. If Sunak were trying to be something else, he'd need to keep it up for a year or more. And bear in mind that he's already attempted it, hasn't he? He's run a few press conferences where it's been noted he's been trying different things out. There was one particular one where he tried to be an Essex wide boy. He answered a question, went, all right. It was roundly ridiculed. It's a good job he's loaded because when he leaves politics, he ain't got a career running a game show host or anything like that. But the technocrat vibe, that's all he's got going for him. The fact that it's not enough is irrelevant. It's all he's got. 13 years of Tory government's been a disaster. People keep asking them to name one thing that's better now than in 2010. Something tangible. Don't give me all this, oh, well, we've got better, more common sense attitudes now. No, something tangible. What's working better? They can't name anything because the only truthful response would be, well, billionaires are way richer now and corporations get away with way higher profits. His own tenure is also a disaster. It's not even like he's swimming upstream against the Tory failures. He's contributing to them. They're all worse now. Crime figures are worse. Education continues to be in a worse mess. NHS waiting lists are getting longer. Asylum backlog is getting higher. Potholes have become, it's a perennial issue locally, but that's becoming something of a national plague. Nothing works. The only thing which allows some members of the public to think that Sunak might turn out all right is that he is hardworking and he seems to be focused on just quietly getting things to work, but they may think to themselves, but he needs more time. I mean, there's a lot to fix. Of course, it'll take him time. That's what they'll think. That's his pitch. It's the only thing that's got any value. For his advisors to be saying he needs to drop the only thing that's working and adopt this other persona seems foolhardy. Then there was the second part of the quote. He is being told to front a period of hyper-political government. Culture wars on crack. This also seems unwise. Sunak is really bad at politics. The Conservatives in general right now are really bad at politics. And I think part of their problem is that the two main coalitions within the Tory party are fundamentally incompatible with each other. If you think about the red wall and the blue wall, they simply don't have... It's not that they've got different priorities. They've got antagonistic priorities. When the red wall have a thing they want, the blue wall, it's like, well, no, that's the opposite of what we want. So it's impossible for the party to focus on their common goal because they don't have one. You could argue that winning the election would be their common goal, but that doesn't work because what will help the red wall Tories retain their seats makes it harder for the blue wall Tories to retain theirs, and vice versa. And because Sunak won't pick a side, he's actually making it harder for both of them to win their seats. This is why the Tories are looking at being left with like 150 seats after the election instead of 250. The suggestion is that Sunak needs to break out of his comfort zone. Yeah, sure, absolutely. Comfort zone's really bad for progress. But the comfort zone he needs to break out of is capitulating to rebels in his party. Like, he has support. He could absolutely take the rebels on. He had the support to fend off Johnson's challenge. It's just that he's trying to juggle things to get universal support. Never happening. Anyone who understands about politics knows you're never going to get universal support. Use the goodwill of the majority to do what the public want, because that will get them on side because you're helping them retain their seats. Instead of focusing on the section of the party that is most out of kilter with the public, lean towards the much larger section of your party that's more in tune with the public. I mean, seriously, you read this article and you think, if the author of this piece is well informed and this is how Sunak's advisors are seeing things, they really are in for a world of pain. The next year of politics may get very nasty, like latter half of 2019, proper nasty, but it won't be ending like 2019. You've got to play to your strengths. Starmer comes across as the uninspiring but dependable leader who will just make things work because that's what he's spent his life doing. It's playing to his strengths. He can't do the blood and thunder speeches, be brilliant, but he can't do it. It's not him. Sunak's advisors are trying to get him to front this hyper-political government because they think it might work against Starmer. But they haven't stopped to consider if Sunak is the sort of leader who can pull it off. And the answer, of course, should they ask that question, would be no, not a snowball's chance in hell. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.